All right, we are back. Time to throw up another video on our Project 36 Ford Tudor back here. What did we do this past few weeks? More body work, more welding, revisited the doors. I thought I was past fabricating on the doors, but I just wasn't digging the way that they were shutting. Under a little bit of tension, kind of harsh. When you opened them, they kind of popped open. So I revisited the doors and decided to go ahead and start shimming the body. That's one of the other ways that you can adjust the door gap, fit, tension, all that, is by not only adjusting the hinges but putting shims under the body mounts up around the door. So I went ahead and took all the bolts off the front part of the body, jacked it up, moved it around until I liked where the doors sat, cinched it back down, and that helped quite a bit. Okay, we're giving the body just kind of a rough sanding right now. Trying to see what condition the panels are in, and I'm taking off kind of the black primer that the previous owner had applied. And you can clearly see that there's low spots and high spots. So this whole area is going to get flooded with filler, and then we'll sand it smooth. And in fact, we'll probably put the trunk lid on and flood it and sand it even with that trunk lid so that the body seam, the gap there, matches. So I'm going to go over the entire body with just kind of a rough sanding, using this primer as a guide coat to see what comes through and what doesn't. Then we can make a plan to start adding filler. Okay, I'm pulling out a couple of dents here. Just kind of banged in a little bit right here. I was able to hammer this out from inside, but there's a brace right here that I can't get to the back side of. And so I'm going to use the Spitznagel, weld on some posts, and we will just pull it out with the slide hammer. Pull this dent out. Work our way over. Alright, the dent's considerably better. It's not perfect, but it's good enough to put just a skim coat of filler over it and sand it smooth. Alright, we're trying to align this door. I decided to go ahead and take all the bolts out of the front corner. And if you run out of room with aligning with your hinges, you can jack the body up in the corner off of the frame a little bit and shim it. And the door will adjust further. So that's what's happening now, is I'm getting closer to having these lines line up. Alright, the door shuts a lot nicer, and all the lines are straight now, and it was just simply raising that up. Wasn't just a couple of shims under these two bolts, and it fixed that door. So I wish I would have done that first and not spent so much time adjusting these hinges, but it looks good now. So we can proceed. Well, I'm fixing to install this vintage heater fan blower, heater core. It's a Tropic Air. It's something that you would have ordered from the dealer or aftermarket back in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and had installed in your car. The original heaters in these were like a gas operated something or other, and they even had like a hot air off of the exhaust manifold system. But we went with the radiator. It's just a heater core radiator. So what I'm doing is I made a template, and drill a few holes in the firewall and patch some of the holes that were used for the other heater and get this thing installed. I tested it, it works. So I'm just making a template out Got a cardboard. We're gonna line it up there, drill some holes, and get this thing installed. Well, there you go. We got vintage heater installed. That will go to the switch. Probably going to paint it body color, I think. We'll clean up all the footwell and put new sound deadener in and seam sealer for some of the cracks. But this will look a lot nicer than the other one. We had a modern heater in there before and it didn't look right. Big plastic thing with a, looked like it belonged to a new car. We're doing some sanding tonight, and normally I use an air powered sander, a couple of different kinds, a rotary and a orbital and whatnot, but I wanted to try an electric because my compressor doesn't always keep up as well as it could, and I wanted to try a cheap electric just for roughing everything in. What I'm trying to do is just take off the primer that the previous owner sprayed on here, and it was mainly to protect the bodywork they had started and to protect the bare metal. But I need to take it off to see what's under it and also to see, get a kind of a general idea of what kind of wows and wonkiness we were dealing with. So I'm going over the whole body, roughing everything in and making a mental note of all the areas that we're gonna have to start paying attention to. Alright, so what we're doing is continuing with the process of sanding this body. And what that means is I'm trying to find where, what stage the body work was in when we got the car. It was from a friend of a friend. They had chopped it and sectioned a couple of things and started the body work on all of the seams and whatnot. And then he got sick and decided to sell off his projects and ended up passing away. And so they started the process of body work over these weld marks and seams, and then they just primered everything black to save the Bondo. So my job now is to go over all of the creases and body lines and curves and sand off the black primer and see what's underneath of it and decide how far to go with shaping the body filler that they put on. And some of it I'm gonna have to take off. I'm catching a little bit of rust underneath some of the Bondo in certain spots. So that has to come down to metal and refilled. So that's what we're doing. I've already gone over the entire car with a real rough sand, just with the electric, and that gave me an idea of what it was looking like. And now I'm going over it by hand, and I'm hitting all of the body lines. And we'll just start keep the process going. We're going to start, once we're done sanding, we'll start adding filler and prepping it that way. This is a tedious process. I also decided to grind the top edge of the doors here because they were very close to the roof and in some cases touching, but I liked the way the rest of the door fit. I didn't want to adjust, the body lines were nice, the hinge was nice, but it was touching up here. So I went ahead and decided to grind down about a 1/4 inch along this top of the door, and then you just weld a bead. Wherever you're finished, you weld a bead and you grind that bead smooth, and that creates a new permanent top. When you're grinding down through that sheet metal, you're grinding that curve off the top, which creates 2 open pieces of metal. You have to weld that shut and grind it and create a new top to it. Turned out really nice. Okay, so I've adjusted the door right where I want it, and this puts this striker, or this centering post a skosh high. And so I'm going to go ahead, because I don't want this to move the door up or down, I'm going to go ahead and slot these 2 screw holes, shave off the bottom so that I can move this up and down a little bit. All right, in continuing to fit this door, I decided to give it another pass because it wasn't quite where I wanted it. I had it set up, and these body lines here were just a bit off. To get them perfect, the top of this door was running into the rain gutter here, or the lip of this roof, and just touching enough to where it was pushing the door down a little bit. And then of course once you painted it, it was just going to chip itself up. So I went ahead and I cut off about 3/16 of the top of this, maybe not quite a 1/4 inch. And now it shuts great, and I got a nice panel gap there. And so to finish this out, we'll just weld this up and file it to a contour that it's supposed to be, you know, the edge of your door contour. It'll be a little bit tedious, and we'll use a small wire and a lower voltage so that it doesn't get too hot, but it will turn out nice. And I'm going to do the same thing at this top corner up here. It's a little bit too close, but I've got all my other gaps where I want them. So this is where it was cut, and it was cut up here and here when it was chopped and channeled. So some of the dimensions are a bit, you know, not perfect. So we're going to have to play around with it a bit more. I thought I was past putting the doors on, but I decided I needed them to get a little bit more perfect. Alright, so I'm revisiting this corner here. I'm not happy with the strength of this lower hinge. I should have bought a few more parts when I replaced this front corner, because where the hinge attaches is a bit weak. And so I'm going to go ahead and reinforce it with a couple of extra plates on the front here. We're going to weld these on and sand it smooth, and that should strengthen that hinge a little bit. We'll see how it goes. I thought I was done with kind of a heavy fabrication, but decided that the door just didn't feel like it was strong enough on this hinge. Another thing that we were working on is I'm starting to install the front suspension. I'm putting that on temporarily so I can put all the front sheet metal on. I want to check all the gaps. I want to check all the fitment before we get too carried away with body work. And to do that, I wanted to have all the front suspension on to see how close the tires are to the front fenders, that type of stuff. So I'll work on that tonight, and on to the next. But we are making progress. Not a super exciting video this week, but as you can see from what we're working on, that we are slowly making progress.